Good afternoon, and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. So I have a little story today, a little story to tell.
I love stories.
So this has happened to me the other day. So after watching the Democrat debates last month, I ran into a nice liberal couple and their 10-year-old son at the mall. The child was so excited about the debates.
How did he know it was his son?
Well, no, it was
They were a liberal couple. How do you know? Maybe
well,
how are you defining it as a son?
Well, put it this way: he didn't have his dress on that day, so
maybe
he
you
was a
said
son.
their child.
Their child. I'm sorry.
You're
sorry.
too judgmental.
I'm sorry. I'm not woke enough this morning. So anyway, they ran into their 10-year-old child at the mall. The child was so excited about the debates that he announced that he wanted to be president when he grew up. His parents were pleased. He added that when he became president that he would give all the homeless people money so they could have food just like him. He would give free college and free child care and medical care to everyone. His progressive parents were beaming with happiness. Well, I quickly told the little boy that he didn't need to wait till he became president. I told him that he could come over to our house and mow our lawn and rake the leaves, and I would pay him $50, and then I would drive him down to the park where a lot of homeless people hang out, and he could give them $50 so they could pay for food.
Wow.
Well, the little boy thought for a moment and then explained, why don't the homeless people just mow your lawn and earn the money themselves to buy their food and health insurance? I quickly welcomed the boy to the Republican Party. Oddly, I've not heard from his parents since.
See, what he should have said, why don't you just take the money yourself and go down there and, just give me the money. Why do I have to mow your lawn? Give me the money. I'll give it to the poor people.
Well, then that would have been even a better answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so this might be a parable, it might be a story, it might not really have happened, but if you think about it, this is what candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are promising. Don't worry about work or striving to get ahead. They will take the money from those of us who actually do work and redistribute it to those of us who choose not to work. So the question is, what does the Torah think about this idea? Doesn't Judaism teach us to take care of others? Should we redistribute the wealth, or is it a divine decision for certain people to maybe be poor? Well, the rabbi just got back from progressive sensitivity training, so he's all ready to answer this question. So I think we should probably listen to what he has to say.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he will offend no one.
Yeah, well, this, you are not going to be surprised,
Okay.
has been tackled by the Talmud.
I can't even imagine that.
The Talmud has really delved into this, and as a matter of fact, this was a debate that went on between Rabbi Akiva, one of the great sages in the Talmud, lived around the 1st century CE,
Right.
and a Roman emperor named Tiernius Rufus. You can look him up. He's a regular Roman emperor, and he shows up in the Talmud as having debated with Rabbi Akiva. And like many of these stories in the Talmud, maybe they actually did have physical contact with each other and did debate, or maybe this is just someone created this debate between these two positions and like how the debate would have gone.
Like, sort of like that story I just told.
Yeah,
Didn't really happen.
we don't know for sure.
Right.
I don't know. But here's the deal, because this is a question. The question that goes, if you believe in God, and God runs the whole world, some people are rich and some people are poor. So then, doesn't God want the rich people to be rich and the poor people to be poor?
Well, yeah, good question.
And if he didn't, so why didn't he make the poor people rich or the rich people poor?
Right.
So it must be that he likes it. This is like, they say the divine right of kings, right? I'm the king, and God wants it that way. What's the proof? Because I'm the king.
And it's good to be the king.
It's good to be the king, right? And therefore God, and you're the slave, must be God wants you to be the slave. Why? Because you're the slave. If God didn't want you to be the slave, then he'd make you the king and make me the slave.
Good point. Yeah.
Right? And therefore, you could then take that a step further, theologically. If I were to emancipate you and maybe make you the king, am I not denying God's will? Let's say you're poor. And let's say I come up with a rule. We're going to take a bunch of money away from the poor people, from the rich people, and we're going to redistribute it to the poor people. Maybe I am undermining God's will. And this is how Tiernius Rufus, since you said a parable, this is Tiernius Rufus's parable. There was a servant to the king, and the servant did something really bad. And the king said, throw him in jail. and don't feed him, and don't give him anything to drink.
Right.
Okay? Starve him. The king's so upset with him. And you sneak down to the jail, and you sneak him in some food and some drink.
Right.
Think the king's going to be happy with
King
that?
will not be happy with that.
King's not happy with that. The king condemned him to suffer.
That's
How
good.
can you undermine the divine decree, or the royal decree, which in our case we'll say is like the divine decree?
I get where Tyrannus Rufus is coming from.
That's where it's coming from, right? So, you know what he really wanted to say, by the way, he wanted to say theologically, he wanted to say the same thing. He wanted to say that the Jews are like the poor people.
Right. They're in
Right.
their place.
Look what happened to them. Obviously, God got mad at them. He brought the Romans, march. He brought us in. We crushed the country. You're like this. Obviously, this is what's supposed to be. And if anyone would come to try to like help you out of it, they'd be denying God's will, because clearly you guys messed up with God. God brought us here to stomp on you, so you have no right to rise up against us, and no one has a right to help you. As a matter of fact, anyone that tries to help you is going against God.
That's an interesting but odd point of view.
Right. And you can say the same thing with our poor people. Here's what Rabbi Akiva answered. It's kind of interesting. Rabbi Akiva said, let me give you a different parable. Let me change a little bit. Let's say the king's son messed up.
Okay.
So the king got really mad at him because the kid did wrong, broke the rules. The king condemned him to jail and said no one should give him any food or any drink. And they threw him in the dungeon, and one guy goes and he sneaks him some food and some drink. Do you think the king's happy with that guy or not?
You think the king would be happy? He lost his temper, and this guy's helping him
King's
out.
happy. He had to do what he had to do,
Right.
but he didn't want this kid to starve. It's his kid.
That's true.
It's his kid. He doesn't want him to starve to death. So he's happy that someone, he did what he had to do. But the other guy, he's happy that someone else did what they had to do, and they saved his kid. So that's what he said. Israel is God's kid. He might be angry, but it doesn't matter. He ultimately loves us. He doesn't want us to die out there. Ultimately, he wants us to have like a hard time in jail, learn a lesson. But he's going to bring us out, and he's going to restore us to our position. And if in the meantime, someone helped out get us from like point A to point B so he could get us to the point where we can be rehabilitated, he's happy with that person. So, same thing here. Now, we can transfer this over to poor people. You might say, you shouldn't help the poor, because God obviously wants them to be poor. So if I take away some wealth from you and give it to him, let's say I take away all of your wealth, we come in, the Bolsheviks, right?
Right.
We
Yeah.
take away all of you bourgeoisie, you lose all of your wealth, and we give it out and we distribute it to the poor, or to all the party members.
Right.
Right.
Same thing.
And the poor still remain poor.
Right.
But
Or
even
just
if we
moreover,
were,
but yes.
so you could say, well, I'm undermining God's will. So it says, really, they asked Rabbi Akiva then, why does God have there be poor people? Like, why did God make them in the first place?
Right.
Why didn't God just distribute the wealth equitably?
That would be a lot easier. He can do anything he wants.
Right. So, why do we need, Elizabeth Warren to redistribute the wealth? Why don't we just have God do it in the first place? Make all these people everyone should have a median income of $28,000 or whatever it is, right? How come these really wealthy people and these really poor people So, Rabbi Akiva said, because the poor people are keeping the wealthy people out of hell.
All right, well, there you go.
Because when wealthy people see poor people, they have a responsibility. They have an obligation. They have to do something. They have to help people. You have to realize that this person is poor and he presents himself in front of you so that you, the wealthy person, can do something about it. Now, what does that mean? So does that mean that that we should then, I love it. I'm glad that there's poor people because they help me, stay out of hell. They help me earn my way to heaven by helping them out. So, no, we don't want to try to keep people poor. It's not our business to try to make people poor or to try to come up with divine justice and say, well, God wants you to be poor, he wants me to be rich. That's not any of our business. Matter of fact, we should try to help any poor person become wealthy. But we should realize that God does have a reason for making people poor. And if he makes some people poor, and has always made people poor, he probably will always make people poor. There probably will never ever be a time, unless maybe in Messianic era, but until that time, there will never be a situation where there will not be wealthy people and there will not be poor people. There's always going to be wealthy, there's always going to be poor. The job of the wealthy is to care for the poor. That's the way God wants it to be.
Well, you kind of skipped something there. I'm getting a little bit confused.
Okay, what did I miss?
Well, let me tell you what you missed here. One, I get it. So it's the job of the wealthy. It's a mitzvah for the wealthy to help the poor.
That's right.
Is it a mitzvah for, let's say, Elizabeth Warren to take the money from the wealthy and give to the poor? Do you lose the mitzvah if Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders takes the money from you, forces you to give the money to the poor? What happened to the mitzvah?
Right.
Did the whole system break down?
Right. So let's say it's the first night of Passover.
Right.
And every Jew is supposed to eat matzah.
Okay.
And you're not eating matzah. So is it a mitzvah for me to take a piece of matzah, like rip your throat open, hold you down, and cram matzah down your throat? No, because there's something called free will. If you don't want to eat matzah, you don't eat matzah.
So I don't get the mitzvah if you cram matzah down.
No. And you know what? You and God will have to deal with it. It's not my job to force matzah down your throat, right? I can try to control you and talk to you and but it's not my job to force matzah down your throat. And if I do, I didn't accomplish anything.
Well, maybe you did just the opposite, because what you're saying before, the whole system was set up that poor people are there for rich people to help, and rich people help the poor people, so the poor people get help. And if you break into that system by taking away the free will, not only do you hurt the rich guy, but you're hurting the poor guy in the long run anyway, because he's not going to get up and try to get wealthy himself, because he's being taken care of by somebody else.
That's it. It's a free will system, and every poor person and wealthy people should realize, the poor are not inferior due to their poverty, right? We don't have that attitude towards them. We're supposed to always try to help the poor. But it is the choice of every wealthy person to choose to help the poor or not help the poor. And if they choose not to help the poor, so be it, and it's between them and God.
So how do we explain the redistribution the forced redistribution of the wealth, good or bad, according to the Torah?
So the Torah there are times where the Torah will say we have obligations. Okay. You have to give a certain amount of your crop to the poor people, right? True. And you can give more than that if you want, okay? You can't give less than that, but you're not obligated to give more. You can give more than you want. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something else. The Torah says you should not give away more than a third of your wealth, because you could become poor. And you also have an obligation. Just like we have an obligation to help poor people, we have an obligation to help yourself not to be poor.
Because if you're poor, you can't help poor people anymore.
That's right. So everyone has an obligation not to be poor.
Wow.
The best of their ability.
Wow. I like that, because you don't hear that often.
So if you give away a third of your wealth, you might be putting yourself into dicey waters there. But it could very well be that's only talking about if you could put yourself into that situation. I don't know if, let's say, Warren Buffett gave away a third of his wealth, if he's really going to be in...
He'd be okay, I think.
Right. Jeff Bezos, could probably give away 2/3 or more, and he probably still would be pretty comfortable.
He can have 2 or 3 more wives that he has to give his money to at the end, and he'd still be all right.
Right.
But then an interesting question would be, because you brought up something earlier, you mentioned that you can give more. So if these people that are asking for money, if they wanted to, like Elizabeth Warren's or the Bernie Sanders, whatever, they could give more.
Right.
Instead of taking from you, they could, if they wanted to, and they could ask all these other people who say we want people to give more. They can, if they wanted to, on their own free will, they can give more.
Right. Which really, this has actually astonished me, because I know from from my Jewish background that we set up self-help. We set up like aid organizations. So, for example, the immigrant aid organizations.
That's how my great grandmother got here and survived.
Right, that's right. And they sent money to people even in the other country to help them out. I don't understand, with all these people are suffering from all these horrible circumstances on the other side of the fence, why are there not social service organizations? Why are they not collecting millions of dollars and distributing, set up, they could go into Mexico and set up shelters where they would be giving out, proper shelters and giving everyone, sanitary conditions and all the things that they need while they are waiting to get processed through the...
Rabbi, you're so naive. You're not... You don't understand. To be a good progressive, you just have to say that you are for open borders. You have to say you want the people. And then anyone else says they don't, and they put it up on Facebook, oh, these people are evil racists because they don't help. You just have to go like, and then you are good.
Right.
Then you've done a mitzvah and you're good because you say you want to help these people. He's naive. Sometimes we have to teach him these things. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
You don't understand progressivism.
So this is in our world, you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to focus on getting the other person to do as much as you do. Now, it's good to get other people. It's also, the Talmud does say that someone that causes other people to do a mitzvah,
not forces, causes.
Right, it causes other people to do a mitzvah. That's right. It gets credit for that mitzvah. But that means that someone should say, I'm organizing a fund and I'm collecting money and I'm going to be distributing blankets. I'm going to be building in Mexico, across from wherever, across the border. I'm going to be building a welcome center for people that don't have, and it's going to have lots of showers.
You don't separate from your children, or the borrowed children, the children you borrowed. You don't have to separate from them.
Right, we're going to set up everything so people are comfortable and they have what they need, and weather appropriate and everything like that. But the Torah does not enforce an idea of you must do this or you must do that.
And it kind of reminds me of, and again, I'm not trying to make this totally political, but when you look at it, the people who talk about this the most, the people who talk about how you need to help the poor, usually give the least money in tzedakah and charity than anybody else. And if you look at the amount of money they give, remember when Al Gore, as rich he was, I hate to pick on poor Al Gore, he's having enough time with the climate. But when he was running for president, he had to release what he gave. Actually, he was vice president at the time, and he gave $300 to charity that year. And the guy, his house is everywhere. He's making billions now. I mean, it's usually that way. The people that talk about it the most of you giving your money away, give less of their money away.
Right.
And maybe that is directly related to the fact that when it's your own choice, when it's your own free will, it's a totally different thing than forcing somebody.
I'll tell you where the real difference lies, because the people who the Talmud says appreciate that poor people are an opportunity to get yourself out of hell. Well, if you believe in heaven and if you believe in hell, then you'll get to work and roll up your sleeves and start helping poor people. But if you don't really believe in heaven and you don't really believe in hell, then perhaps all you'll do is just talk about the poor people, but never do anything about it.
But you still, when somebody else calls the other guy a racist, you will hit like on. That's the most important thing. I got to go back to that. That's all you really have to do to stay out of hell if you believed in it.
Right. But we don't believe that there's anything noble, but also not ignoble about being poor. People who are poor are not any lesser than anyone else. They're really not any more than anyone else. This is God's decision. We're supposed to try to help everyone out as much as we possibly can. And when we see a situation, we don't turn a blind eye. We try to help them out. We realize that this is a situation being presented to me by God. We also realize that this is a situation that probably will never, ever cease to exist. That there will always be wealthy people. There will always be poor people. Nobody should take anything for granted. The wheel can turn at a moment's notice on anyone, so no one should ever take anything for granted. But they also have to understand that this is part of the way that God made the world, that some people are wealthy and some people are poor. And that can change, by the way, in a moment's notice.
And I guess both sides are really partners of God. I mean, you're a partner. I mean, God wants someone to help the poor people, so he makes us the partner.
It's a transaction.
If you have money, you're the partner. But I guess the other side's the partner. The person that's in poverty is a partner as well, and he gets taken care of as well.
That's right.
God's got it pretty much figured out.
That's right. You know, I have a fund, and I help out people who are in need and all that. And there was one fellow. This is my favorite experience that I have. There was a fellow who was trying to get a business started, and he was struggling, and they were like, it was serious. He was really, really struggling, and every so often I'd just send him $100 here and $100 there just to help him out. And the years went by, and he got himself on his feet, and he got his business up and running. And you know, every now and then he comes by and he gives me $100 to give to the next one.
That sounds like something worked out pretty well in this deal.
I just think it's every time when people give me money to distribute to the poor, but when he does, it's just the sweetest thing in the world. He got it when he needed it, and now he's sharing it with the next one when he
kind of sounds like a more efficient and probably divine system than the ones that are being suggested by Bernie Sanders.
It's
be
beautiful. Well, we haven't yet found the system in the world that actually works, other than that system. The communists tried. We know it all happened there. Every other, Robin Hood, everyone, it's all. It never works.
It doesn't work.
Never works out.
I mean, Michael Moore said the Cuban thing worked out pretty well. Though he liked that, but yes, not that well. He hasn't moved there yet. Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. And again, we are responsible to take care of the poor. It says in the Torah we're responsible.
Absolutely.
But that makes more sense. That system makes us partnering with God to be responsible for the poor makes more sense.
And if you can help them be not poor, that's also fine. There's not any sin to stop a person from being poor. It's just the fact, any given person, you want that person not to be poor. But just understand that probably in total, there's always going to be poor. There's always going to be poor.
Makes sense. I got to tell you, this makes more sense than the Democrat debates. I probably should contact this little fictional 10-year-old boy / girl, whatever
he is,
child, and let them know this system makes a little bit more sense. I like this better. All right. Well, see if anything else comes up next week to discuss. From the rabbi.
Right. We'll gentrify this neighborhood right here.
Absolutely.
But next week it's going to be like
we should do that. That would be the right thing to do. See you then.